What's up, everybody? Coming to you live from the Beaver County Auto Studios. I am Noah Hiles. Alongside me, Alan Saunders. It is the first ever episode of the Pirates Hot Stove Show. Alan, thank you for having me on and giving me this opportunity. Looking forward to talking some Bucko baseball.
Yeah, it's the one thing we didn't have anything going of yet since we launched Pittsburgh Sports Live. And, of course, we launched in the fall right at the end of the season, so it was kind of tough to get into it then. But I figured we'd have some off-season news, and it just so happens we have a lot of off-season news, kind of including this morning as we record this show.
Yeah, when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And we just so happened, like an hour before we're scheduled to film the show, the Pirates announced they have brought back, I should say, third baseman Jung-Ho Kang. They did not pick up his option, and today they announced they signed him. The details of the contract have yet to come out as of when we're recording this, but they're bringing him back on a one-year deal. It's expected to be around $2 million. There might be a player option or a club option in a second year, but the details have yet to come out. So first things first, Alan, what do you think of Jung-Ho coming back?
I kind of thought this was the most likely scenario, that they were going to decline the option but then find a way to re-sign him. I'd be surprised if it's only 1 year. I think there'll be some kind of option one way or the other. I expected that to happen. He doesn't have, to me, an obvious fit. I guess he's gonna replace David Freese and be the other half of the platoon with Colin Moran at third base, which is fine. I don't know. I don't have any expectations for him. I think that's the big thing, is that, I was talking with Clint Hurdle during the season when they had sort of started him through the rehab process and getting him back onto his feet after so much time off. And I said, was there anybody you looked at that had, gone through, obviously not this exact thing, but anything similar to this at this age, at this stage in their career? And Clint was like, no one's ever done it. No one's ever missed this much time, spent this much time away from the game in their 30s and then come back. And so there was no blueprint. So there's no I think that makes it hard for me to have expectations for the kind of player he's going to be.
And to build off your point, it's not like this guy has 10 years of experience in the major leagues.
Yeah.
He came over here in 2015. He played, I would say, 2/3 of the season in 2016, if that, maybe. With the injury to start off the year and then everything else that took place toward the end, he didn't play at all in 2017, and then in 2018 he had 6 at-bats. So this guy has a year and some change of MLB experience, and he's trying to restart his career in his mid-30s. It's definitely an interesting move. To me, what this indicates is, we were talking about this before the show, is the Pirates aren't as confident as they would like. They made that deal and sent Garrett Cole to the Houston Astros. Musgrove, I think everyone could agree that was the centerpiece of the deal. But the way they tried to sell it was, we've got a guy that's going to be in our starting rotation for a couple of years, hopefully 3 or 4, but we also have our third baseman of the future. And that's what they, I think, had the vision for Colin Moran. And this move indicates to me that, his progress has not come along to the point of which they had hoped it would be.
Yeah, I think there's certainly something to that. I don't think Moran had a very good year. No. I think that there's still a lot there to work with. It's not like he's a guy they need to give up on, I don't think. But I don't think he played up to his potential, certainly. And, the other thing that's interesting, though, is, you figure the lefty is the big half, right? Mm-hmm. So even if Kang is going to play against every get every left-handed at bat that there is to be had at third base, it's not that many. I mean, they're still really going to need Colin Moran to play better than he did last year if they want to make third base a strength instead of a weakness.
Now, to, I guess, round up the Jung-Ho Kang talk, you talked about third base. Do you expect him to play anywhere but third next season? He came here as a shortstop. That's where he split time with Jordy Mercer, and then you saw him move over to third base. There's obviously a need to fill the middle infield positions with Harrison and more than likely Mercer gone. And there's also right field that they could possibly put him at. Do you see him playing anywhere other than third base?
I think right field would be the next most likely option.
Okay.
I don't see him playing shortstop. I just don't think the legs are there at this point. Second is maybe in play, but, he hasn't played there since the day that he got his knee destroyed. I just don't see it. It's going to be so hard for him to do the things that he needs to do to be a productive offensive player again, that I just think that's asking an awful lot to then move him to a more difficult defensive position. Right field and third base.
What about first base?
First base, yeah, but who does he play? Like,
if there's like an injury,
yeah,
he could fill David Freese. Like, he could be like the David Freese.
He's going to replace David Freese.
Yeah.
That to me is the role that he'll have. So yeah, maybe they're going to give Bell a day off. To me though, if you're going to give Bell a day off, I'd be playing Moran at first and Gung at third.
Yeah.
Because I think Gung's the better defender at third base, or at least was. So yeah, I mean, but I'd be interested in right field. If I were the Pirates, I'd send him out there a couple times in spring training and see what it looks like anyway, because that's certainly a need for them. They don't. Not only do they need somebody while they're missing Gregory Polanco, they don't really have a fourth outfielder. I mean, they have Adam Frazier, who I assume is going to play a lot somewhere. But even he isn't really a prototypical fourth outfielder. He's more of a utility guy, or actually he's just an offensive guy that doesn't really have a position more accurately. But yeah, I mean, so if Gunn could be third base and right field, I think that'd be. The other thing is that gives two different left-handed hitters that you can have the option to platoon against a tough lefty. It doesn't have to be Moran. You could decide to platoon Polanco too. I mean, there were times last year where he struggled, and they didn't really have that sort of veteran guy, right-handed hitter that they could put out in right field and say, okay, we're just going to replace Polanco against a tough lefty. So I think they'll try it, but I don't know. Like I said, expectations low, and if he can come back and be a good third baseman, I think they'd take that.
Yeah. So I think we'd both agree that by bringing him back, they hope that obviously he would improve their defense, but he'd be a big addition to their offense coming into this season in 2019. And speaking of the Pirates' offense, it's going to hopefully look a little bit different because since their season came to an end, they got a new hitting coach, Rick Eckstein, or Eckstein, however you want to say it, is the guy they brought in, former Washington Nationals hitting coach. Alan, did you have any takeaways from this hire?
I just think it was a good move to make a change. I didn't think it just seemed to me like things weren't. You couldn't point to a lot of successes for Jeff Branson in that spot. It seemed like Colin Moran didn't have a good year. Josh Bell didn't have a good year. The guys that came up from the minors didn't play all that well when they got up here. And there still wasn't a ton of growth from those players that are really important to the Pirates, and so I think that made a lot of sense. Obviously, it's hard to know a lot about how much a hitting coach impacts a team. You could look at some of his the numbers from his time in Washington. They don't jump off the page at you. They're not that impressive. But again, you can only work with the talent you're given. So I think it's hard for me to sit here in November and say, oh, great hire, it's going to be fantastic. I think we'll see. And I think it was the right thought process goes into, okay, we have some talented young-ish, and I hate to say young because they're not really that young anymore, but younger, I guess, players that haven't reached
I would say raw.
Yeah, they have players that they don't feel like have reached their full potential.
Yes.
I don't think, even though he's 30. No, Starling Marte hasn't reached his full potential yet
not
either.
at all.
So when you have players that haven't reached their full potential, I think you can look at the coaching and say, okay, well, it's not just one guy, right? It's Marte, it's Polanco, it's Bell, it's Moran. There's players that we feel like haven't reached their full potential. So either, as a team, the Pirates have simply just overcast all of their minor league hitters, and none of those guys are actually any good. Or maybe they could replace their hitting coach. So, I mean, that's step one, I suppose.
Yeah, I feel like the two options that you named, the easier option was to replace the hitting coach.
No, you can't replace those four guys.
Yeah, we talked about this move, my friend Alex Stumpf and I, another beat writer for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he highlighted the fact that Eckstein has a degree in kinesiology from the University of Florida, which is the study of muscles. Now, I know you're wondering where I'm going with this, but in an interview with Adam Berry, he talked about how hitting is a motion process, and that's how he looks at it. And when you think about some of the hitters on this team, like Josh Bell, who's always moving around and he's always changing a whole bunch of different stuff with his swing, this might be a guy who can get Josh Bell back to a 20 home run type of player. So that's why I was interested in this move. There's not much else on him, really. Like, you could look up the national stuff. If you look at his Wikipedia page, you'll see he donated a kidney to one of his older brothers. It seems like a good guy. But for the most part, this is something that, like other position coaches in pretty much all sports, you have to wait and see how things play out before you can really, formulate a huge opinion on it one way or another.
Yeah, I think especially because he hasn't been at the major league level. So it's not like we can, look at last year's numbers. Let's say they hired, Jeff Bannister, who was the guy that was talked about. You could be like, oh, look, the Rangers hitters did really well last year. So obviously, that was great. And there's nothing you can, he was a minor league coordinator for the Twins. So you can't just, there's nothing to draw from there. So yeah, I think it's a wait and see thing, but I think it was a good idea to make a move there, and I guess we'll see what happens. The other thing I'm sort of interested to find out about is they had two hitting coaches. They had Jeff Livesey, who was an assistant hitting coach that they also let go. So it's going to be a one-man operation. Are they going to have they bring somebody else in? I'm interested to see how that goes because I'm not sure. I think the Pirates have a good thing going on the pitching side where they kind of have Ray Searage, who is more of an overseer at this point and also kind of gets into the weeds on some special projects and really revamping things for guys. And then Justin Message, who is sort of the everyday, here's the starting pitcher, here's the game plan for the Astros, day in and day out things. And I feel like that works because I feel like there's always, two or three guys on any given baseball team that are really struggling at any given moment that really need some in-depth work. And then there's 22 other guys that you can't just stop paying attention to while you do that. So I'm interested to see if they bring somebody else on board. I would, if I was the Pirates, I would lean towards that, but I think it also depends on the individual involved. I'm not sure, that he wants to have an assistant, but we'll see. I'm curious about that.
All right. Moving forward, our next thing I think we should cover is, they declined options on two of their players, yet they brought one of them back that we just talked about, Jung-Ho Kang. But the other option they declined to pick up is veteran middle infielder, or veteran super utility player, I should say, Josh Harrison. So Josh, looking like his career in Pittsburgh has come to an end. Been here since 2011, one of the, big pieces of the core of the Pirates' success from 2013 to 2015, especially in that 2014 season. I think you can highlight that. I mean, he's the main guy. He's the Pirates' MVP in that year. That's the year where they lost McCutchen, they lost Cole for a part of that year. They had a lot of injury problems, and they had a very slow start. They went to Harrison as a last-ditch effort, desperate times, and he really bailed him out. He was a two-time All-Star here, and someone the fans really grew to love. You hate to see him go, but it was the best for both parties, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was kind of obvious for a while they weren't going to take that option. Just a lot of money for a guy who didn't have a great season and doesn't do a lot of the things that are currently in high demand. If you look at the sort of the limiting factors in Major League Baseball from an economical standpoint right now, the thing that everybody wants is pitching and power. And obviously he plays a lot of positions, but he doesn't play pitcher. And he doesn't hit for a ton of power. And so I think that just means the value on the open market is not going to be what it was when he signed that contract. And so then the option doesn't make any sense. And, that's a part of this job in this industry that kind of sucks sometimes, is that's a good guy, a great team guy, great energy, great for the fans, great for the city. Everybody would love to have Josh Harrison back, but there's the financial part of it doesn't work. And, I don't know, maybe he ends up coming back. It's not like that door, I don't think that door would be totally closed, but it would certainly not be at anywhere near the amount that option was for. But, I think the Pirates, in a lot of ways, they're going to miss him because he's a guy that just in the clubhouse was a leader, a bringer of energy, and a sort of a good combination of youthfulness and experience that you really need over a 162 game season. Nobody wants the old guy that spends all day in the training room because then he's not really part of the team, and nobody wants the 24-year-old that doesn't know what he's doing either. You got to have those in-between guys are really important to building playoff caliber teams, and he was one of them last year for the Pirates, and they don't have that many of those guys anymore that have kind of been there, done that. They're going to need guys like Josh Bell and Jameson Tyone and Adam Frazier, who aren't that old, but they're going to have to be kind of those guys going forward because there's just not a lot of experience in the clubhouse right now.
Yeah, you talked about Jay Hay in the clubhouse. I had a really good relationship with Jay Hay. He was one of the first players that I ever got to interview in my first year covering big league baseball, and he was always someone that was awesome to talk to. He treated everyone with respect. But my biggest takeaway from his mentality as an athlete, every time you would ask him pretty much about anything, it would always revolve back to winning. He said that in the offseason, I want to be here if we're trying to win. If we're not trying to win, then I don't want to be here. During the season, when they were at their lowest point in June, I remember people were asking him, do you still want to be in Pittsburgh? And he replied, I want to be somewhere where we're winning. And just to have someone, a veteran who can just drive home that point, let's not get lost in the fact we might be a couple games under 500. We're still trying to win. And then at the end of the year, in his post-game interview after his final game at PNC Park, he apologized to the fans. He said, we really wanted to make the playoffs for you guys this year, and I'm sorry we couldn't do that. And I think that's Jay Hay to a T. He's a guy that on a piece of paper does not look like a great ball player. I mean, he's 5'8". He's like 180 pounds or whatever he is. His stats, he's had some good years, hit over 300 and whatnot. But for the most part, this is a guy that scouts probably didn't even expect to make the major leagues, or if he did, not to have a career go as long as it's already been for him.
He was a throw-in on a trade for a middle reliever.
Yeah, exactly. So for him to get to where he is now is an accomplishment in itself. He's someone that 10 years from now, like I said, when we look back at the revival of baseball in Pittsburgh, his name will be a part of it. And I think that's something that is worth recognizing. So to round up our recent Pirates news talk, Corey Dickerson, the guy who couldn't field, the guy who was a DH, excuse me, and that we needed to platoon out in left, is now being recognized as a Gold Glove Award winner in left field. Awesome to see. When he came here, the main thing was, he might be a good bat, but his defense is going to be a liability, especially out there in big left field in PNC Park. And sure enough, he, took that as a challenge, and he got better in the offseason, and he is now known as the best defensive left fielder in the National League.
Best defensive left fielder
in baseball, excuse me.
Yeah. He, I think it's kind of funny because at the beginning of the season, maybe like 8 games in or something, I kind of looked down at some of the advanced fielding statistics. And, of course, that's not a very good sample size for any statistic, and certainly not advanced fielding statistics that take years and years to really be meaningful. And I just happened to look down, and he was the league leader, and I don't remember if it was defensive run saved or UZR or one of those, but league leader in defensive run saved. And I sent out a tweet that said, best defensive.
I remember when you said that.
Best defensive player in all of baseball, right here in Corey Dickerson. And I was kind of riffing on the fact that he was, came with that reputation of being not a great defender, and I was sort of joking about it. And then the guy goes wire to wire as the best defensive left fielder in all of baseball. Crazy. And I just think, so it was about, I guess, May or June, I wrote a story for Pirates Prospects about how sometimes a scouting report can follow a guy longer than it ought to. Mm-hmm. And that, I went back and read prospect reports when he was coming up with the Rockies and things that people wrote about him early on in his career, and everybody wrote the guy was bad at defense, and maybe he was. I don't know. I wasn't watching him then, but if you looked at the numbers from his last couple of years in Tampa Bay, it wasn't that bad. Mm-hmm. So, in some ways, this should be. It feels very unexpected, but I think in other ways, some people should have been able to see this coming, and maybe the Pirates did, and we'll give them some credit, at least for believing that he would be an everyday left fielder. But I think this was one of those cases where kind of the narrative got over its feet a little bit, and that, that guy, he's a good hitter, can't play left field. Yep, sorry, it's just the way it is. And then you looked at the numbers, and he wasn't great, but he certainly wasn't bad. And so I think that's certainly a reminder to, a guy who he was, who a player is 5 years ago is not necessarily who he is today.
I think my biggest takeaway from this whole, Gold Glove award for Corey Dickerson is that there are a lot of things in baseball that require just God-given ability. You and I, we could go in a batting cage for 5 years, and we will never be able to hit a major league slider.
No.
However, there are certain things that you can improve in the game of baseball by simply dedication and hard work, and fielding is one of those things. So if I'm on the Pirates roster, I'm looking at Corey Dickerson and thinking, if he can go from someone that everyone considered as a bad fielder to statistically and being recognized as the best fielder at his position, then I can do that as well. If I'm Josh Bell, I'm using that to become a better first baseman. If I'm a young guy like Kramer or Newman, I'm using that to make myself more valuable to a team that I'm trying to be a starter on come 2019. I'm Colin Moran. I see that they just signed a platoon guy. I want to be the everyday starter. I know a problem for me is defense. So every single one of those guys should look at Dickerson and think if he can become, they might not be able to transform themselves into a Gold Glove caliber player, but Dickerson recognized his strengths and his weaknesses. He knew that he's got to play a little bit deeper than everyone else. And, being in the right place at the right time is essentially fielding. Knowing where to line up is going to set you up in the best position to succeed. And he did that, and he got better, and props to him. So that'll round up what's been going on lately. So now we're going to move on to a little bit of a game here. We'll go quick, Alan. And, since it's my first show, I decided I'd be generous. I got a little gift here. So no free ads. We're going to move Sean Rodriguez right in front of him here. And I think a classic thing I'm going to do for every show is I'm going to bring a Pirates bobblehead. Okay. I got a million of them. So I went, at first show, we got to start off with a big name. Of course, Sean Rodriguez.
Oh, yeah. And that was a very sought-after bobblehead as well. Yeah.
Buddy.
Because
that was a day I will never forget in Pirates. I mean, that was something else. So, like Sean Rodriguez, who is now a former Pirate, in these bottles here, you can see I have little pieces of paper. There are names of 6 former Pirates who I think, one way or another, could possibly make for a decent addition to this club in the offseason if they were to come back via free agency or trade. So one by one, we're going to go through the bottles real quick. You can pick one here. And you're going to tell me if you're going to drink this bottle, if you're going to throw it out. So my first name I got here. This is an interesting one to start off with. Keon Broxton from the Milwaukee Brewers. So this one is, he would have to come over via trade, obviously. He's still under control from Milwaukee. Keon Broxton didn't spend a lot of time for the Major League Pittsburgh Pirates. He obviously came up through the system. He went over in a deal. Who did we give? It was
Jason Rogers.
Jason Rogers, that was it. I knew he was a first baseman. And this past year, Keon Broxton did not do much at the Major League level, only 4 home runs, hit under 200. But last season, in 2017, he had 20 home runs. So with the Polanco injury, do you think Keon Broxton, who's not going to start anytime soon in Milwaukee with their outfield, do you think that this would be a decent move to make? Try to bring him back?
I'm skeptical of the power from 2 years ago coming back, but they need a
fourth outfielder.
They need a fourth outfielder. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a terrible idea, I don't think.
He's better than Jordan Luplow, I look at it. Luplow might have more potential, but right now, I think that Keon Broxton is probably a better baseball player than Jordan Luplow.
Keon Broxton's a better baseball player, but if you kind of consider that after Polanco comes back, then that guy's essentially going to be a sub and a pinch hitter. I think I might rather have Luplow as a pinch hitter.
Well, then you can do whatever. I just look at it. You just trade.
You can't pay a lot. Let's just say.
Yeah, that's fair.
If he could be had cheaply, that makes sense. You can't give up anything you're going to miss, though.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take you behind the curtain. I actually had Jung-Ho Kang in one of these bottles, and then when I arrived, I found out he got signed. So I had to think on the fly, but I thought this was a good name.
Keon Broxton.
All right, who do you got, Alan?
I've got Jordy Mercer.
Okay.
And it's not crazy. Like, either what is the demand for Jordy Mercer going to be on the open market? I don't really have a very good feel for what it's going to be. Is there a team that really likes him? I don't know, maybe. But if nobody really likes him, and then he's going to sign somewhere, I don't know, in like the $2 to $5 million range, why not the Pirates? They need a shortstop more than anybody else, and I mean, I think they need to bring in someone that has some power that can play the position, but Jordy can play second. They could come up with some kind of offense defense platoon. I just think they need unless they go find a starting shortstop that is going to be an everyday guy and hit and field and do everything they want, which there doesn't seem to be one of those on the open market. At least there aren't a lot of them. Then they're going to have to find some way to piece this thing together. And I don't think Jordy Mercer should be an everyday shortstop for the Pirates, but he could be a piece to piecing it together if that's a road they want to go down.
If Jordy Mercer is still around in late March, and we didn't sign, if the Pirates don't sign anyone, like you said, that's going to be an everyday starter, I'm all for them bringing him back. All right, real quick, let's go through a couple more here. I will go with the next name.
It's like power hour.
I got, we're celebrating my first show. Justin Wilson, left-handed reliever on the market, free agent, played for, the Yankees and the Cubs since he was part of the Cervelli deal that got him out of town, and then was a part of the Chicago Cubs for the last couple years. Left-hander, something that the Pirates bullpen needs. He would cost, I would imagine, around $3 million a year. That's what Fangraphs has him, slated as, I believe. And I think that, I would drink this beer. I would give him a 1-year deal for $3 million.
I think he's worth the deal. I just think the Pirates have more pressing needs than the bullpen to spend their amount of money on. I've got Neil Walker.
Ooh.
And
coming home in multiple ways.
Yeah, I don't see it. I just don't see it as being a realistic fit. I don't think Neil wants to come back. And
doesn't want to retire a Pirate?
I don't think so. And
okay.
Even if he did, I don't see a fit that makes a lot of sense. I just don't know. Maybe. I wouldn't totally rule it out, but I don't see it happen. Let me see. I'm not totally opposed to the idea. I just think it's very unlikely.
So, what ones have you drunk so far? Were you in on Keon Broxton, or did you pass that up?
No, I think I'm 0 for 4, really.
So you were drinking Keon Broxton if it's happy hour.
Yeah, Keon Broxton if he was the special. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think really other than that, I'm
Wilson
rather abstinent.
Okay, all right, good for you. All right, last two here. I have World Series MVP. Steve Pearce. That's just a weird sentence to say. Steve Pearce is a guy who we talked about their need for power. Steve Pearce will provide that. He's someone that if you want to bring him in to, be a platoon guy, play off the bench. He's a strong right-handed hitter with, veteran experience, clubhouse guy. I think he was the big leader in Boston's clubhouse this past year that everyone seemed to get along with. I think that would be a decent guy to bring in. I know that the problem with Steve Pearce is, A, you're going to have to overpay him for this postseason that he just had, obviously, and B, where do you really play him? He's primarily a first baseman and a DH in Boston. He has experience playing third. He has experience playing right field. I guess those would be right field would probably be the number one spot for what the Pirates need. It would be interesting. I don't know. I think that he provides them with power, not much else, as far as defense and everything. I don't know if I'm drinking that beer.
Yeah, man, that's the one they need the most. That's the thing they need the most, though. I might take a sip.
Oh, okay.
It can't be for a premium price.
Yeah.
If Boston really wants them back, then they're gonna have.
They can have them.
But if it's a reasonable price, an outfielder with some pop, play a little first. Play a little third. It seems to make a lot of sense to me. That's what they really need is power. He has it, and they need a right fielder, and he can play some right field. So it seems to make sense to me. I would spend money on Steve Pearce.
All right, and let's round it up with who you got.
Oliver Perez.
Oliver Perez. Now, let me sell you on Oliver Perez, because everyone laughs at this idea. Oliver Perez last year pitched 32 innings for the Cleveland Indians. That doesn't sound like a lot, but he appeared in 51 games. He was their left-handed specialist. He would come in, face one batter, and get taken out, which is obviously more ideal for an American League team. But he went 1-1 with a 1.39 ERA.
It's good.
And so when you're talking about the need of a lefty in this bullpen, not named Steven Brault, or not named, obviously, Vasquez, the closer, I like Oliver Perez. If you can get him for a very cheap price, I know he's 37. I know his rookie year was literally when I was in 4th grade. It's been a while. It's been a minute since Oliver Perez has pitched on the North Shore. However, I think you're getting a left-handed pitcher for what? To face a left-handed batter late in a game. I'm fine with having a situational guy like that on the books if it's, not affordable, or very affordable, I should say, not expensive. So I would take a sip of the Oliver Perez cocktail there.
It won't happen because the Pirates don't believe in situational left-handed relievers. As just an organization, they don't want to race the roster spot on a guy that can only get out 15% of the other team's hitters. And secondly, Richard Rodriguez is really good against lefties.
He is. But he's going to have to step up to fill, the void with Santana gone, too, as well.
And if they just use Stephen Brault like the Indians used Oliver Perez, I think it'd be just as good.
Fair enough.
They insist on using Stephen Brault as this long relief kind of guy. And you look at his numbers against left-handers last year, it was incredible. His numbers against left-handers are just as good as any loogie left-handed specialist out there. If they really wanted a guy like that, they got one in Stephen Brault.
All right, so to wrap up the show, we're going to talk about non-ex-Pirates that the Buccos should consider in free agency. I have a list of top 5. Alan, I want you to rank my list of top 5 in your mind. All right. What's likely, and a combination of likely and what you would like to see them do. Number 5, I have Brian Dozier, a guy who's coming off of a tough year, but not too long ago, he's a 40 home run type of player at second base, a position of need for the Pittsburgh Pirates. You could also probably put him at first base, of 32 years old. All of these guys I have on my list are going to cost the Buccos anywhere from around $9 to $13 million a year, which I think is a price they can afford to pay. And I think that would pretty much round up their offseason spending, considering what they spent on Gung, which isn't much, but you know how it is. So number 4, after Dozier, I have Jose Iglesias. Someone that I think is probably, out of everyone that I'm going to list here, is the most realistic person that they could really give a serious look to. Defensive guy, would be great at shortstop. He's only 29 years old, one of the younger players on the open market as far as middle infielders go. I think would be a very good fit here. Doesn't provide much offense, though. That's an obvious flaw to him. Number 3, Asdrubal Cabrera. Why I like Asdrubal Cabrera, he's coming off of a career year at the plate, 20-plus home runs. He could play 3 different positions in the infield, probably even first base if you need him to. So you get that versatility, allows you to give spot starts to Newman and Kramer and Moran and still find ways to get Asdrubal in the lineup. He could be, I don't know if I'm thrilled with the idea of Asdrubal Cabrera batting cleanup on opening day for the Pirates, but I like that better than Colin Moran batting cleanup on opening day. So that's where I'm at with, and he's a veteran. You could sign him to a 2-year deal, allow your young middle infielders to kind of develop while he's there. Number 2, these are the 2 guys that I really would like to see, one of them, if not both of them, get signed. Marwin Gonzalez, formerly of the Houston Astros, played a big role in them winning. I think they won over 100 games this year, I believe, and last year, obviously, they won the World Series. Marwin Gonzalez is a guy who is Sean Rodriguez here, but he actually fields well and he hits well. He played shortstop when Correa went down. He can play third base. He can play second base. You can put him all over the outfield, and he's an above-average bat. I know he's only had a WAR of 2 or higher only once in his career, but I think the versatility he provides in the field makes him incredibly valuable. I think he's going to be a little bit higher of a price than the other players that I've recently named, but I think he's someone the Pirates should definitely look into. Number 1 on my list is someone who I'm super high on, DJ LeMahieu. I think the Pirates, if you look at how Marte produces at the plate when he's batting in the second spot, or you can go down the order, they need a productive leadoff hitter. They searched through everyone. They had Robbie Iswikowski scheduled to bat leadoff in game 162 if they would have played Miami to end the season. I mean, they tried everyone at leadoff this season. I think I'm not sure, but I think they broke a major league record, actually, for most leadoff hitters in a game. DJ LeMahieu is a leadoff hitter. You can bat him there. He's a very good leadoff hitter. I know his offensive numbers in Colorado, they're a little bit higher than what they would be here. But he's also a Gold Glove caliber second baseman. So you're helping your team offensively, you're helping your team defensively. He's a guy who's been in the playoffs, not a lot, but still has that, veteran experience. He's only 30 years old. I would imagine around probably like $12, $13 million a year. You could bring him in, 3-year deal. You could still let everyone else, all the young middle infielders, get their reps at shortstop. You can move him to third. LeMahieu can also play third base, probably teach him to play first base. He's a very good fielder. I think he gives your club a lot of flexibility, and he gives you pretty much everything you need. Alan, what are your thoughts here to round up the show on my 5 guys that I like?
I think that they only have enough money to pay for one really good free agent, and so that has to be a shortstop.
Okay.
Unless they just can't get one. But I think the plan A has to be to spend money on shortstop. It's the position that they can grow the most at. I mean, Adam Frazier is going to be, at the very worst, I think an average second baseman if that's where they put him all year. I mean, he's not great defensively, but he hit well in the second half of the season. I think they feel like they have some answers there. They don't have any. I mean, Newman didn't hit at all. He didn't even field very well.
No.
Pablo Reyes can't really be an everyday short. Like, there's no answer at shortstop right now. They have to figure that out first. I think Iglesias is probably the most realistic option that you named, just because I think he fits their budget a little bit better. I really like the idea of Marwin Gonzalez.
I do too.
The versatility he provides, the Pirates love that.
He's got a little bit of pop in his bat too.
Yeah, he can hit. And I think Asdrubal Cabrera is like, if you don't get one of those two, that's a pretty solid fallback option.
I agree.
That he's a little bit older.
32, I believe.
Yeah. But I don't think that's necessarily a terribly bad thing.
No.
Like I said, the Pirates don't really have any veterans. You look at who's the oldest. Is Marte going to be the oldest guy on the team as it stands right now?
Yeah, if you go through the bullpen,
Gone.
Nova.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not
many.
And all those guys are in their early 30s. So, like, I don't think adding another guy in that age range. Actually, something interesting I've read about how, like, championship teams often have guys that, like, fit into age brackets. And they don't have, like, a 38-year-old, a 34-year-old, a 32-year-old, and 220. You know, they have guys that were the same age. And he would kind of fit in with that older group of Pirates. Cervelli, I guess, is sort of in that age range as well. But I think those 3 guys sound like good options, sound like realistic options. They fit in the budget. Gonzalez would be at the high end of what they could spend, probably. I don't see Dozier's being realistic just because he's only a second baseman. And then what do you do with Adam Frazier? Like, yeah, he can play right field. I just feel like because they have at least a serviceable second baseman, then you sort of have some diminishing returns by spending your free agent money on a guy that basically only plays second base. I guess he plays some first too, right?
Who's that, Dozier? Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, I think if Josh Bell isn't their starting first baseman, then things have gone bad.
Yeah.
Bad. So, and then who's the other guy? DJ LeMahieu.
LeMahieu.
Same thing, mostly second baseman, probably at this point. But probably was he in Colorado when Hurdle was there? Did he come up with?
I don't know. I don't know if he's been in the league that long. I'll have to look that up.
It was certainly probably at least. Did he come up? Did he come up with Colorado?
Yeah.
So then, I mean, there's at least a relationship there, whether or not I played for him. It'd be one I'd look into. But those Gonzalez, Iglesias, Cabrera sounds like a solid 1, 2, 3 for me. And if they get any one of those 3 guys, I think you feel pretty good about the way the offseason is going.
I completely agree. Well, that's all we got. Alan, any final thoughts?
No, I don't think. I mean, I think we hit all the big points, and I'm interested to see where the Pirates go next. I think that'll be very telling what their priorities
already more active than they were last offseason. So, for Alan Saunders, I'm Noah Hiles saying thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to, obviously subscribe, share this with all of your friends. And yeah, that's all we got. Thank you for tuning in from the Beaver County Auto Studios. This is Pittsburgh Sports Live, the Pirates Hot Stove Show.